Welcome to the Possibility Podcast. I am your host, Sarah Knight. In this session, I talk to Diana Beresford Kroeger and release this podcast on the day that her latest book is released, To Speak for the Trees, My Life's Journey from Ancient Celtic Wisdom to a Healing Vision of the Forest. And Diana very graciously agreed to speak to me today after she was invited to participate in the Wild X event on the 5th of October in Montreal. And alas, a conflicting event in her schedule meant that attendance was not possible. But she has a very important message that she wants to get out to not only all Wild X attendees, but everyone, everywhere. And so please listen on as Diana shares this message with you. Hello and welcome to another session of the Possibility Podcast. Today, it's a little bit hard for me to contain my excitement. The woman that I am speaking with is someone that I have admired for quite some time. Diana Beresford Kroeger is a world-recognized author, medical biochemist, botanist, and perhaps my favorite term. She's a self-prescribed renegade scientist, and that is a great word for her. Her education is really quite remarkable. She spent many, many years learning the Brehon laws of the ancient Celts in Ireland, which taught her the remarkable depths of the Brehon knowledge of plants and nature, as well as many years spent in more Western-style academic education in so many areas of science and medicine. Diana is most likely the leading authority of the spiritual aspects of trees, the medicinal aspects of trees, the resource, the ecosystem, the ultimate incredible significance of trees for our planet and for our species. And her knowledge on all of those elements is quite remarkable. She is an author of 6 books, coming on 7. I have just learned another one to be released in a couple of months. She's the author and presenter of a documentary, Call of the Forest, which I understand has gone viral in India and other parts of the world. Her latest book, To Speak for the Trees, includes her whole journey and her healing vision for the forest. I've read this book and I practically ate it as I read it. I was so enthralled with this book. And as well as carrying her own incredible life story, there's so much information on this book on the incredible spiritual and medicinal properties of the trees. And really its ultimate message, which is one that Diana has been very, very actively sharing for many, many years now, is the importance of trees. If we want to address this climate crisis, trees are the answer. So Diana, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, it's my delight, really.
And Diana, I should also right now congratulate you. I hear 2 months ago, you told me just before we started recording, because this information I don't think has really reached much out into the news as much as it should have. You were given an incredible award. You were awarded a Doctor of Laws from Carleton University.
That's right, yeah, for my work on climate change. But you see, the problem is that I'm a woman and there's a certain amount of gender bias still there. So there you go.
Right. And that's what's keeping this information quiet, which is interesting, since there are so many people around the world that are seeking you and people like you, and the way that feminine knowledge is carried. So I'm delighted that Carleton has recognized this. And what they say on their website, in recognition of your outstanding efforts in preserving the Earth's climate and forests through the use of ethical, scientific, and traditional concepts. So that's remarkable. You share now, I understand, again, because you told me, that Nelson Mandela and Kofi Annan are 2 other people that have been awarded this honorary degree. So you stand amongst some high ranks there. Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
As we discovered before we started recording, there's many, many things that we could talk about. But what I would really like to do is get you to start with briefly describing how you came to hold so much knowledge that spans the spirit and the science when it comes to trees.
Well, when I was 12 to 13, my family essentially were wiped out, and it was in Ireland. And technically, I should have been sent to what would be equivalent to the Aboriginal schools, the the schools that the kids were put in, and these schools are like jails. I mean, and you're battered, your culture is battered out of you. I was supposed to be sent to the Magdalen laundries, and that's a huge disgrace in Ireland right now, where I would have to wash clothes for the people of the city of Cork. And what happened was the judge pulled me into his chambers, and my father's family are aristocrats. In fact, I'm related to Princess Di. My name is Diana, I know, but I'm related to her and to a lot of the royal family. And my name is Beresford, and the judge was terrified that some of my mob, and that's the Beresfords, would get after him and he'd lose his job. And they're vindictive enough to do that, as a matter of fact. They're lords and ladies and marquises and God knows, the whole blinking schmoz of all of these aristocratic titles. So instead of putting me into the Magdalen laundry, he put me under kind of curfew for 10 years in the care of my uncle. And my uncle was a bachelor. He was a famous athlete. So can you imagine that happening today? A 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl being put into the hands of a man who had never been married. I mean, it just wouldn't happen now. No. But what the good thing was is his name was Uncle Patrick O'Donoghue, and he was Uncle Pat to me. And the man had 10,000 books in this house, and they were all first editions. And I ate and swam and sank and fell over books, stacks of books everywhere, and that was my life. So then what happened is that in the summertime, then now we're going into my mother's family in the south of Ireland. In the summertime, I was packed off to a place called Lachines, which is near Bantry. If you want to look it up on the map, it's a beautiful place near Bantry. And of course, it's south of Killarney. And my mother's family castle home was the Castle of Ross in Killarney, and my mother's family were ancient aristocrats too. But now, hang on here now, the Castle of Ross was just a corner, huge big corner, and there were pigs and sows in the corner. So don't get excited that it was a big huge castle, because it wasn't. Anyway, my mother's relatives were all in their 80s and 90s, and they all spoke Gaelic on the Tá Gaelic a good that they had the Gaelic aus Gaelica, and spoke Latin and Greek. And I was the last child of that family. There were no more children after me, and essentially, technically to them, I was a royal child. I was their royal child, because under Brehon laws, which are pre-Magna Carta, the Brehon laws were put together in the year 300, and they had existed for 500 years before the birth of Christ. And those laws say that one orphan child is everybody's child. There is a sharing in raising a child as an orphan. And 22 people out of the Valley of Lachines decided that I had to be given my ancient inheritance. My ancient inheritance was knowledge. They taught me all the knowledge of the ancient world. And that was medicines, that was Anfishoigri. Anfishoigri are all of the magical systems of telecommunication, telepathy, thinking, meditation, and all kinds of other things, and the laws of the trees. The laws of the trees are such that the language I am using today, that you're listening to, is not based on an alphabet A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's based originally in the 3rd century on an alphabet of trees, and willa, sacred trees that had due respect to them, and the taboos all around that in language meant that the forests had a greater protection at the time of Christ than they have today, because the ancient people understood that the planet had a mantle, and the mantle was the forest. You remove the coat, you remove the mantle, and you kill the child of the planet. So those were the wisdoms given to me. And then what I did is, of course, they decided that I would have as much education as was possible in the Western world. So I went to all kinds of, I got very, very educated. But what I did is I put all those ancient things to test, to trial. And I trialed all of those ideas and found that they were right. So I carried that second bundle of knowledge under one arm while I got all of the other degrees, and I've got enough degrees to gag a maggot, under the other arm. And that was when I decided that I was offered a professorship of medicine. I refused that, and that's a long time ago now, because I wanted to take that sacred trust that was given to me. I was told in a sacred trust to bring this ancient knowledge into the new world in the time of now. And the time of now, it will be needed by everybody. And I have been very faithful to that mission. And it is mission impossible, but now it's mission possible.
Wow, Diana, your story is remarkable. When I read your book, To Speak for the Trees, what came across so clearly was this, something that I feel very personally, this idea of destiny, and that everything does happen in our lives for a reason, and that if we listen to our deep truths and we're willing to stand behind them and act on them, then our destiny unfolds as it should. What you went through, your traumatic experiences. So I can see that you had some understanding at your very young age that there was something that was going to unfold for you, but that you were brought through the education that you were brought through, and that you came to Canada and took in the science, and now have this voice that is so needed, and your commitment to a commitment to that destiny, to bring this knowledge and this wisdom to the Western world, and to speak for the trees is something I'm so grateful for, and something that is absolutely so needed right now. You mentioned before we started recording that actually all of this book, To Speak for the Trees, were sold out on pre-order. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, actually 3 weeks ago.
Wow. I mean, it just goes to show that people really, really, really are ready for this. So, I mean, you've already, what you said there too, was that much of what you learned through this Celtic education, through the Brehon laws, you later proved through science. Can you talk about that a little bit? How those two worlds came together for you?
Yes. Well, first of all, I must say from what, your piece of the conversation is that one thing I was taught empathy. And empathy, I was taught it was driven into my soul with very harsh lessons to me as a child. And empathy is something we all have to adopt, we all have to have, and look at other people, animals, even butterflies, with the eyes of empathy. And hold those things in our heart, because if we can do that, we can do incredible things, all of us. So, going back to the medical libraries, well, what I did is I put all this thinking on trial. And if you have a scientific mind, you do have to do that. If you're going to believe that, you do have to put all of that kind of thinking on trial. And it came out okay, all fine, except this very funny thing that I was taught to do is a form of telepathy, and I call it running strings on people. I run a string, a mental string, and you pull that out of your psyche in absolute silence, the kind of silence that's known in Buddhism. And you pull it out of you and you string it on somebody, and then you know about them. You know that they're going to call you. You know that before they will call you on the phone. You know how they're doing. And that is something that I was taught. I don't have an answer for that. It makes you very tired once you've done it. But it's there, and I don't actually have an answer for that. There is possibly some answers in quantum mechanics and in quantum physics, but that would take a very long conversation to discuss that. It's very simple, but a long conversation.
You know, that your ability, this telepathic ability, came across in a number of your stories, and seems to me that it runs right parallel to this empathy that you're talking about, maybe one more stage of that empathic interaction. And something that struck me in the book, and it was further to what you were just saying about empathy and the importance of being able to feel a connection with all living things, is that you really seem to see and feel and understand that trees are sentient beings. And this doesn't just come across that you understand this from a spiritual and empathic perspective, but also that there is scientific evidence for this. And that seeing of that, how, I experienced that as well. I feel deeply connected to trees and I'm able to connect with them. But that seems to be a skill that we so need right now. I mean, if we could care, as you just said, if we could care about it would be so much easier to care for them. Is there something that you can offer? How can you develop this empathic connection with nature and with trees?
Let me kind of tell you something which is kind of astounding. I mean, this is just a short podcast, but there's something astounding. The DNA pattern of a tree, the DNA of a tree is the same as you, same as me, same as all mammals. It's a pattern language that is used, and we never knew it was there. Every cell in the tree has got the same pattern language as you and me. It is multiplied a bit more, but it is much more complex. And the tree itself produces something at the end of the branches called a gibbane structure. A gibbane structure is like a tiny molecular cello. And that cello is capable of reception. And when you sing to a tree or you talk to a tree, is the basis of all of the old songs that were used at harvest time and used at spring planting time. And it is not an extraordinary thing to the Aboriginal people to know that there is a listening in all of nature. It is an extraordinary thing for a Western person to think that, but it is not extraordinary for the medicine men and medicine women all over the world. A number of years ago, I was at a conference and I was in the company of this medicine man who actually lives out on the West Coast. This man has 3 PhDs. They were looking at the bending of Ulmus americana, that's American elm. And he said to me behind my back, whispered into my ear, he said, I can hear that tree weep.
Wow.
He was not a fool. He was a very educated man, and I understood exactly what he was saying. Of all of the crowd there, he came to me and said that to me, and I know what he was talking about.
Wow. And so, I mean, from what you have just said there too, these structures are obviously, again, it's scientifically proven that these songs that our Indigenous people, our ancient Celts knew to be sung at certain times of the year, that the receptors on these trees are actually picking up this sound.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking ancient cultures here, and everybody assumes they're a bunch of savages. The first great calendar was produced out of the Celtic culture, and that's the Colony calendar. They were tremendous mathematicians. These people were not stupid. They were brilliant. The greatest materia medica, and that is the body of knowledge in medicine, is Celtic. It's held in the Bodleian Library, and it's held in Spain. They had rules and regulations for hospitals before the time of Christ. Hospital comes from the word, the ancient Gaelic word, ospidale. Ospidale is the word we adopted as hospital. You go out into the street and you see a car, C-A-R. In Old Gaelic, it's C-A-R-R. And that is transportation on wheels. We use Gaelic every single day, and we don't even know it, from the time of before Christ. So, education in the old world, in the ancient world, was 17 years worth of education, and it was equal for a boy or a girl. If a girl was smart, she could be a physician. She could be an astronomer. She could be a mathematician. She could be a poet. It's only in the last 500 years of looking at society where you look at women and you put women down because they're supposed to be the breeders of society. But indeed, many, many women in the ancient world have been brilliant women. I'm thinking about Queen Maeve, for instance. She ran her own army. She had her own sailing ships. And believe me, when she captured the men, she pulled them into her own boudoir. And guess what happened to those gentlemen? I will not say it on air, but I get great amusement out of that.
Diana, your fierceness is remarkable, and this is not new. Like, this is not, your fierceness isn't just something that comes for a lot of women. You know, a lot of women. I'm 45 now. I remember kind of when I turned 40, my fierceness started to come to the surface. You have always been fierce.
Yeah. What I say is, for a woman, all stripes, all colors, dots, spots, the whole lot of us. You put your courage in a suitcase, you put your hand down, you pick up the suitcase, and you walk with it all of your life.
Beautiful, which you certainly are. You know, before we started recording, we talked a little bit about Greta Thunberg, the 16-year-old climate activist that is leading a global movement. And she is fierce, and she is courageous, and she is 100% standing behind what she knows to be true. And the world is ready for it. We were waiting for her, waiting for you, waiting for people to show us how to carry the briefcase.
And Greta has the heart of a soldier. She's the heart of a warrior. She may just be 16. I'm not sure if she's 15 or 16, but she has the heart of a warrior, and that will always be there in her. And we should be very grateful that she exists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned it quite a few times in your book, how you actually carry this suitcase along and to accomplish what seems impossible. And you talk about just starting off with that first step, the first step of belief and on that road. Can you talk a little bit more about, you gave so many examples in the book of huge things that you have accomplished that started with just one step.
Yeah. Well, I was about 12 years old when this happened, approximately. My childhood was just so messed up. But what happened in the Valley of Lachines was that we had one field that was a field of corn, and it was 5 acres. And in Ireland they call barley corn. And it was ready. And Pat Lachines, whom was my cousin there, he came up and he looked at the field and he said, "Oh my goodness, it's ready." But there was a couple of tractors in the valley, and generally they would swap the tractors around to cut the corn and to sheaf it and stook it. But the tractors, we couldn't get the tractors, and we were afraid that we'd lose the crop. If we lost the crop, we'd lose the money, you lose everything, right? So we walked into the field early one morning, and Pat said to me that he needed help. And he had a scythe and a scythe stone for sharpening the scythe. And I had my 2 hands and he had his 2 hands. And I looked at the width and the breadth of that 5-acre field, and I thought, my God, we can't do this, Pat. I was just a young girl. I wasn't very strong. I was like a stick, really. We started. The first step to do anything is the thought that you can do it. It's the thought in your mind that's important. You look at it face on face, and you say to yourself, I might fail, but by God, I'll have a good shot at doing it. We started early in the morning, and he cut the corn, and the movement of the scythe is like a ballet dancer. It's a beautiful movement to watch a man and his instrument work. And he showed me how to bind the corn, put it together, stook it. And by the time the Angelus came, which was 12 o'clock in the Valley of Lachines, we had almost half the field done. We were getting exhausted. But by the time the 6 o'clock bells rolled over the field, we were finished. And that was the biggest lesson of my life. You can't learn it in a lab. You can't learn it anywhere. that kind of lesson is a lesson of the mind, that you, one person, two people can do extraordinary things and nobody can take it away from you. Nobody.
Diana, wow. That experience is remarkable, and it really seems to have paved the way for what you committed to for the rest of your life. You walked away from the comforts, the safety of academia, because you knew, your truth knew that you would be absolutely stifled and controlled there, and that you had a much bigger mission than simply one that of prestige, of being associated with an institution.
And the funny thing is, I now have the prestige. I mean, who would have thought that? My wheelbarrows have got 2 holes in them. I have this huge garden. I have this huge place. My research area is huge. Who would ever have thought in my life that the academia would start respecting me now? I mean, it's crazy.
It's beautiful, isn't it? The way that this has worked. How ironic and how beautiful. It's incredible. There's so much of what you just said that I want to go back to. But one thing that because your knowledge spans so many fields, you talk about all of the medicine that we can get from trees. And actually, in one of your YouTube talks, I heard you say that more than 50 or 60% of our medicines come from trees.
Yeah.
60.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about all the different, what we get from the bark, the pollen, the different biochemicals that are given off? Could you just give a few examples of that incredible medicine?
No, I'll track back to our DNA, okay? What I said is that the DNA pattern language is in trees, okay? But it is multiplied in trees. It's in a different type of slightly different type of formation. What that does is it makes the trees into molecular machines, molecular biological machines of biochemistry. 60% of all our medicine is made in trees. Some of the medicine is so complex, and it comes from the internal part of the tree where you have cryptogamic fungi living in the middle of a tree, and there's a war going on between the tree and the fungi. That produces a huge arena of medicines because both species within the tree protect itself. And from that, we have things like the taxane compounds. Some of them are almost impossible to manufacture, put together in an organic chemical lab. The taxane compounds cure cancers. They go in and they shoot cancers out of the body. All of the women who have had breast cancer have used taxane, taxoferol, all those compounds go in and they knock it out. Now we have another new set of imaging from trees, and it is called immunotherapy, is being set up now, which is enormously successful for all forms of cancer. Some of the redwoods produce a diterpene compound. So the men walking in the redwoods in the early morning with prostate cancer or the beginnings of prostate cancer is something they should do. Then if you have something like depressions or anxiety, a lot of people have that, will you sit under a willow, especially where there's running water, because there's 22 separate compounds of the salicylic acid compound that is produced. Sometimes some of them are lactones, some of them have different diterpene structures on them. It helps in the breathing and the sitting, a steady state sitting and mental. Just shut off your mind and just go into a lollygag session sitting there, and these 22 compounds will go into your lungs, go into on the surface of your arms, get absorbed into the tissue of your body, go on your hair, and you will come away from there feeling one hell of a pile better. You'll feel really refreshed. But go back to salicylic acid. Which one of us doesn't have an aspirin in our medical cabinet? We all do. That comes from trees. That came from the distillation of evergreen compounds. So you have, that is all we have. All we have, you and I, the whole population, all we have is nature. outside of nature, we ain't got an imagination. We don't have the ability to sit down and manufacture medicines right off the spot. We have to take a comb and fine comb all of the structures within. It's called biodiversity, biological diversity. That's where our medicine comes from. Folks, you cut down the forest and you destroy your medical cabinet. It's very simple.
Diana, just to touch on a few things you said there. So if I understand, you do manage to pack a lot of knowledge into 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, look at the inside of my brain. I tell you, it's mush.
So first of all, what trees have to offer us, we don't have to eat the leaves or the bark. I mean, what you're talking about, they are emitting these compounds that we are breathing in that are absorbed through the skin. We just have to sit underneath them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there are some huge experiments going on now. I'm going to talk a bit of physics to you now. There are several laboratories around the world, and MIT is involved, Germany is involved, Finland is involved, and these are called cloud chamber experiments. They have been proven mathematically, very, very difficult kind of work to do, and it's mainly done by physicists. And what we are finding is that trees produce aerosols, and the aerosols are like dogs with a tail. Think of a dog with a big long tail, some short tail, but think of your dog with a tail. The tail picks up moisture out of the air, and we are finding that is the beginning of the weather patterns of the world. Who would ever have thought that? Who would ever have thought that water in the hydrological cycle starts with a tree, starts with the aerosol pattern off a tree, and then you have water, fresh water, potable water, underground water sources. You take away the forests and you take away the water.
Beautiful. Can you take me out then a bit further? Because in your book and some of what I've listened to, you talk about the global significance of Canada's boreal forest, and you touch on salt patterns and weather patterns. And can you take this picture out really big for me right now?
Let's do this for the whole globe. The last great working forest is the boreal forest. It works together in a synchronicity that we in science still do not understand. It crowns the planet. It is like a regal crown on the head of the planet. It is a huge forest representing about 30% of all global forests. That forest is the last forest, and it is the workhorse of the planet. That forest does extraordinary things. What it does is it leaches compounds like fulvic and humic acid into the great salt waters of the sea. Humic acid is a chelating agent. The chelating agent pulls out iron from the land into the sea, which is poor with iron. The iron activates all of the nanoplankton, all of the crococalis, camasiphonales, all of the huge structures of the seas that are minute, tiny little creatures, and gives them iron, and they can multiply and get great. That is the feeding foundation of the sea for all fish, all mammals, and all whales, and all the things like great otters, and all of the wonderful whales that you just love watching puffing up, and the puffins, and all of those things. That's what the boreal does for us. Wow. And it also holds the coldness up in the North Pole and in the South Pole. Well, in the South Pole, you don't have the forest, but you did have them there once upon a time. But right now, that we're talking about the globe right now, the planet right now, it holds the cold up by a reflection of light. And it's by the Albion effect, it's called. It holds the cold up there. So you start hammering away at the boreal forest. Well, you may as well put nails into your coffin, get the coffin ready, because that's where we're all going if you keep doing that kind of stuff. Because the planet has to be oxygenated. and the carbon dioxide is very high, but the oxygen concomitantly is getting lower. So if you don't believe me that you need oxygen, look at a tree and then hold your breath maybe for an hour, 2 hours, or maybe for the rest of your lifetime. And you'll find out where life comes from in a breath of oxygen that comes from a tree, and many of those molecules of oxygen come down from the boreal.
Wow. 30% of the world's forest in the boreal forest. That's incredible. And
you know what's happening in the Amazon right now. The boys are down there with their torches.
Yeah.
And actually, I think we should have a global panel of scientists and people and politicians. God knows I don't like the word even politicians, to be honest with you, of people, ordinary people, and have a couple of school children involved in this one, and do advising for the whole planet.
Yes.
And let's do that so we can stop the burning in the boreal, that we can stop these kind of crazy things. But you know, the New Zealanders have got one answer for this. They turned one of their forests into a person. They turned one of their rivers into a person. And in the eyes of the law, that challenges Magna Carta.
Yes. I didn't realize New Zealand had done that. I had heard Bolivia had done that. I didn't realize New Zealand had. Wow. Yeah. You know, it's getting more and more understood, but I mean, maybe not yet appreciated, that the very air that we breathe depends on trees, that they produce oxygen for us. But you touched on two other things. The fact that if I understand what you explained, that the degrading plant matter from the boreal forests gets into our river systems, breaks down, produces these humic acid compounds that basically form the foundation of the whole marine food web.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's that simple. That's right, and it's simple. And actually, it's really a neat thing. I have to tell you this one. When the sun goes down, then something else special happens on the floor and in the ocean itself. The lack of light presses the button of an enzyme called the nitrogenase enzyme, which exists in all these tiny, weeny creatures. The nitrogenase enzyme gets down to work and builds up the protein. And it's the protein body in the morning that allows these things to divide. And that's the feeding foundation. So it's all light triggered. It's daytime triggered, nighttime triggered. It's a really neat system. And all you kids out there, I mean, if you want to look at all these, oh my God, they're fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So, you know, all these questions haven't been answered. So to me, it's a miracle. It's just the tapestry of nature, the tapestry of biochemistry within nature, and us included. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic.
It is. And it's so, you know, the stories that you tell of how you discovered things and how yes, we know so much, but there's so much more that we don't understand. And what we now understand, the significance of the boreal forest, how much do we not know? So on that, I mean, you talk about, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but that area in Manitoba.
Machawanaki.
Right. You were involved in, is it something like 30,000 square kilometers?
And having the size of Denmark, yeah.
Wow. And that's now a World Heritage Site, is that correct?
It's a World Heritage Site also for culture.
Ah, beautiful. As well as resource. So what can we do? How can we ensure that Canada's, what remains of our forest here, continues to remain, and how can we as individuals protect it?
We have to have a conversation about greed. We have to have a conversation across this country and discuss greed. We worship the celebrities. We worship the people who have a lot of money and are greedily pulling every penny of money out of the system. We've got to stop that, and I think the kids know a little bit about that. But also we have to hold hands with the Aboriginal people. Now, some of them are a bit greedy too, so they're not all perfect. But choose the ones that have got their have got their feet on the ground and want to protect their systems, just like Sophia Rabliauskas, all of that crowd up in Poplar River and in Bloodvein. They stuck it out for a long time, and there are lots of Aboriginal people doing that right now. So back them up, give them your shoulder. Yeah. And between all of us, that is what we need to do. It's not give in to these celebrities with their wonderful dresses and their this and their that. No, that won't hold the generation coming. It won't serve them well. Let us serve them well with thought and meditation and thinking and protection, and get rid of this greed factor. I mean, all you have to do is look around the globe and you see that greed, right-wing greed, is mounting up. Just stop it. I mean, go out and vote, for heaven's sake. And everybody vote, and vote with your conscience, and vote with thoughts for your children and your grandchildren. And besides, if you don't have any of those things, go and vote for somebody else's children and grandchildren, and have a bit of empathy for what kind of a future we're leaving for them, because it's not very smart for us to do this.
Diana, that is such a clear and powerful message. I mean, you say this in your book, the debt that we owe to our Indigenous peoples. And that's what really, I think, as you said, you were the last in your line to learn this incredible knowledge from your ancestors that had been passed on. We still have people in our land deeply connected to the land and with an understanding vast and way beyond what we can learn in our schools, that are willing to share that knowledge.
Yeah, they're marvelous.
You also have a really simple, really clear plan that people really need to hear right now. You've called it your Global Bioplan. Can you tell me a bit about that, please?
No, first of all, the Global Bioplan, that comes from a book called Arboretum America, and it comes from another book, Arboretum America, Philosophy of the Forest, and it comes from the other book, the Arboretum Borealis, A Lifeline of the Planet. Both of those books are peer-reviewed by Harvard, okay? So the basic distillation of those two books is the Global Bioplan, that in Harvard they think this is very, very important piece of research, as a matter of fact. My mathematics to reduce the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere of 400 parts per million, that is what is causing climate change. The reflective dark ability of those molecular structures in the atmosphere are the big problem. So what we have to do is to look to the forests. The forests are the only green molecular machines that suck up carbon dioxide, and the big word is called sequester carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. They break up carbon dioxide into carbon, which goes into the tree, and oxygen into the air that you're breathing right now as I'm speaking. So my suggestion to take the 400 parts per million, which is now in the atmosphere, down to the 300 and safe and healthy parts per million, is to plant one person, each person on the planet, each person plant one tree per person, native tree, for the next 6 years will bring the carbon dioxide levels down to the 300s and will buy time for future energy proposals. And those future energy proposals are in the basis of photons, photon research. The research has already started. It will take some time. We're buying time for a cleaner, safer planet.
Amazing. Diana, it's so simple, and you've done the calculations. Just 6 trees over the next 6 years. And can I ask you then, I have 2 questions from that. And the first is, if you don't have access to land on which you can plant a tree, I know you've referenced, well, plant a garden, have a flower box, but what do you think of, I mean, we both, before we started recording, talked briefly about the charity Tree Sisters. What about giving money to a charity that plants trees? Can that be a part of the plan?
That can be a part of the plan. Yeah, that can be a part of the plan. Like, I mean, for instance, you can help even The people in Winnipeg who are trying to push the film, push the documentary, which is going all over the world, they could do with some financial help, I would think, because I myself would like to have this film shown really in Ireland. Part of it is shown in some places. I brought it to Birr Castle, but people like me, I don't get funding from anything. I don't have a pension plan. I have nothing. So look to me, maybe even buy my book so then I can kind of push things ahead for myself. There are people like me who exist, and we're doing a lot of stuff for nothing. Have pity on us. The Tree Sisters would be one thing. All of the people who are planting trees, but it has to be the right tree into the right area. Now, I have put together an app, and the app is called calloftheforest.ca. That app is for free, and it's geo-positioned, so wherever you are on North America, you can look at that app and you can find the best trees to sequester carbon dioxide in your area and go and do it. I didn't have enough money to do it for the rest of the globe, and if there's somebody listening out there, like somebody who knows Cirque du Soleil, because I did try him, Guy de la Liberté, I did try him. There are people with money. Give me some help. Give people like me some help. Then I can apply this to the rest of the planet. So it's very simple, really. I mean, I have, like I said, a wheelbarrow with 2 holes in it. I am not going anywhere. I'm just flogging along and doing what I think I have to do. So help people like me.
Absolutely. Diana, thank you so much for saying that. I mean, that's what you did when you walked away from academia was you walked away from having the comforts of knowing where the salary was coming in. And you did it because you knew that you had to, but it does put you in the position of really continuing to trust and really working from that place of higher good and passion and offering yourself as a resource for all people and all things everywhere. And this I was amazed when I looked at your website again recently, calloftheforest.ca, where that app is that you talk about, how much free stuff you put out. There's so many great resources. I learned when I looked at it, I have this beautiful Jack pine and had wondered how to get at the seeds. And there's a little 2-minute video you have up there telling me how to get the seeds out of my cones. There's so much information there. So thank you. I love that message. If you don't have access to land and you can't plant a tree, support the people that are working for the trees. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's very simple. Yeah, that's very simple.
Beautiful.
And that app took me a year to do. I wrote another book underneath it to explain all of this science and make it more simple and make it correct. So, I mean, it took, and I wrote the whole thing on a roll of wallpaper, believe it or not. And I wrote the whole darn thing. It took me ages to do, and I rolled up the wallpaper, put it into a tube, and sent it to Tactica. And Tactica decoded it, and they were thrilled to get it. So, that's a bit of wallpaper. That's what I had. I mean,
It's just remarkable. This image of you, the renegade scientist, those are your tools, a roll of wallpaper and a wheelbarrow with 2 holes in it.
That's right. It doesn't get any better than that, does it?
And what you're able to do. Wow. As I know, we've been talking for a while. I wanna wrap this up. There's so much more that I could ask you, but really, I wanted to. I as I mentioned to you, I have a forest behind my house. I walk through there every day. I'm always getting beautiful messages from the trees, from the forest. If the trees could give us, if they could get us to hear just one message right now, what would the trees say?
They're lonely. They want more forest. An Aboriginal woman told me that. She had got that message.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Diana, could you, for anyone that's listening, you have, so we've got the Call of the Forest documentary, the calloftheforest.ca website, your new book coming out, To Speak for the Trees. You have so many other beautiful books. You didn't mention these two, the two that I have, The Sweetness of a Simple Life and the Global Forest.
The Global Forest is published in Chinese also.
Oh, wow.
And the Chinese top publishing house in Beijing, and they did a beautiful job with that book.
Amazing.
So it is across the world, yeah.
They're both incredible resources for life and for living. And you have another, can you just tell me a bit about this other book that you have coming up? You said there's another book going to be released in November that you're involved with.
Yeah, that is called the International Handbook of Forest Therapy. And the top brains in the world have been chosen to put that one together, and it's under the auspices of the World Health Organization. And what it is a book really essentially on ordinary immunotherapy for people and protecting them from cancer. It shields. What it does is the comments in there, the basis of some of my stuff and everybody else's stuff is that the forest produces aerosol compounds that actually excite and increase the T-cell ratio, which is the guarding system of the body, and it protects your body from cancers for 30 full days, all cancers, and the compounds are alpha and beta pinene.
So walking through a pine forest?
That would be forest bathing, yes.
This book basically talks about the science of forest bathing, is that right?
That's right, and all the clinical studies that have been done, all the neutrophil increases and all of that. It's actually the scientific basis behind that. Incredible. And it's very exciting. It's very exciting for oncologists to have this in their hands. Incredible. It's very innovative, it's cheap, and it's easy to do.
Oh, amazing. And as you said, so important as we move forward in these times. I mean, yes, we really have to be able to face the climate crisis, but there are so many other concerning assaults going on, threatening our health and our survival. And we need as much protection as we can get, that's for sure.
Yeah, and one thing is community, build a community.
Yeah.
So you're not alone. Our communities have been destroyed over the last number of years. So let's rebuild them back together and believe in one another. Where none of us are perfect, but just kind of like people, love people. Do the whole thing, behave towards people as you yourself would wish to be treated. So do that. Then you'll find people love you and respect you and will do a lot for you. And then you'll do that in return. And it makes life worth living. It makes us laugh at things. We can laugh at ourselves. We can see how silly we are. And that's fun. It makes life good and warm and nice.
Yes. Yeah. And we have the same message as the trees, don't we? I think we're all a bit lonely. This way that we've developed of living that we think of as so modern and so necessary. Actually, we're all pretty lonely.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah, and the more we're doing it, the more lonely we get. So let's get out of our boxes and do different things.
Wow. Diana, Gura Mila Magat.
Agus ganaig tú mi agus ganairi tú. Surprise, Yeah. Now what you said to me, Garamila Mahagut, may there be 1,000 thanks to you. And what I said back to you, maybe you always will be healthy, have the breath of health in your body, and may you rise with that. Rise to your own abilities with that.
Beautiful.
That's what I said back to you.
I am receiving that in. Thank you. Thank you, Diana, so much. I so look forward to learning more from you in your next book and your other books I have yet to read, and hopefully we get a chance to meet in person.
Would be lovely. Yeah, that would be great.
Beautiful. And enjoy the wonderful book reveal. To Speak for the Trees is in the world. So enjoy that, the manifestation of this lifelong work of yours, which is really such an incredible gift. I gained so much from reading your book, and the timeliness of it is incredible. And as you said before we recorded, this is one very important piece to ride on what Greta is creating. So she's demanding people pay attention and take action. And here it is. Here's the action that can be taken.
Marvelous. Yeah. And you just swing that into the airwaves and let's see who catches it. Will be wonderful. Like a butterfly, it'll fly like a butterfly.
Exactly. Thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
And thank you for listening. And there you have it, a plan, 6 trees over 6 years. And so much more information on the right trees to plant and how to plant them is available on her website, calloftheforest.ca. We need the trees. Thank you.